I'm Doug Mark, president of Learning Zen. I'm here with a podcast for 5 franchising questions. My guest today is Coffey, co-founder of Frenchie's Modern Nail Care. He's also a franchisee of Anytime Fitness, and he hosts a podcast called Real Talk Franchise Business. Guy, thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Doug.
Could you tell us how you and Steph, got into nail care and the story of Frenchie's?
We got into franchising, as you said, back in 2007. You mentioned that we're with Anytime Fitness. We still are. And Anytime was really small at the time. They had about 100 clubs open. And we got into it. We absolutely loved it. We built out clubs around Colorado and small towns. I was working it from the club operations side, building the client base and managing them. And then Stephanie went to work for the Anytime Fitness corporate, the headquarters. Basically, she was their first remote employee before Zoom was a thing. And she was learning franchising from the corporate side of things. Long story short is, went up through supported a ton of people in franchising. And then she was the president of Waxing the City, a beauty brand that Anytime brought on before they turned into Self-Esteem brands. So she was running that. I was running the clubs. And then we had always had our eye out for something that would change people's lives. And in franchising, we found the model that could. You could buy one unit, you could buy multiple units. We saw people in Anytime Fitness. Props to them for making this possible. People's lives were immensely changed for the better through that, just growing, being part of a good system. They kept on iterating and getting better and better. And people went from having to work to building their own business, being in business for themselves, but not by themselves, and doing extremely well and having all this freedom. So we love that. And when Stephanie was looking at data for waxing, it's always lumped in with nails. And what we noticed was nails was a majority of the whole industry. Back then it was like $12 billion. And so we said, this is an industry that really needs an update. It's not known for its client service experience being very good. It's very transactional. It's kind of dirty. There's bad exploitation in terms of human trafficking, standard products being used. There's lots of dangers involved. We said, if we put a client experience in place and had a focus on cleanliness, we could have a brand and we could do this. We could build a national brand on it. So that's how Frenchie's was born. And so we learned as much as we could. And then we opened a nail studio, not knowing anything about running a nail studio. And we went up the learning curve way faster that way. That was back in 2014. That studio is still in operation and doing very well. So that was our proof of concept. We had friends and family that raised their hands in Minnesota. So we opened 2 there. They actually opened them there. And once we saw that they were doing well, we decided to go to market and build a brand. And right now we're in 13 states. We have 25 units, and we're just about to start really growing.
So Guy, being a franchisor at Frenchie's and being a franchisee, I think you bring a unique experience and a unique, perspective to the franchising world. What is it that you personally wish suppliers either knew better or were better prepared as far as when you get into conversations with them or somebody selling to you? Is there something that suppliers could get better at when they speak to a franchisor or a franchisee?
From the franchisee point of view, it's important that the franchisee understands what the value is for them. I think a lot of that is simplification of them running and operating and managing a small business. I think that is one of the keys. So it's, sure, price is important and terms and what it's doing. But I think for me, as a small business owner running a franchise, as a franchisee, is like, tell me how I can get things done smoother, easier, less involvement, and have it done correctly. It's all about that, because if I can get stuff off of my plate and have it done properly, and working with somebody that I know if something goes wrong, which everything has something that goes wrong, is we're going to have a conversation and we're going to figure it out and move forward. That's the key for me. So suppliers is so big. I mean, we have gigantic suppliers. We have Life Fitness. They're a very, very big supplier, and then we have smaller suppliers but we also are really, really dependent upon, like Zogix wipes. They're out of the Northeast. We've grown with them. I know the owner there, and even when he was just starting out and had some challenges, he was always interested in having the conversation, like, what's wrong? Like, how come we're not how come we're not getting more orders or things like that. So that communication, I think, is really important, and that makes a difference. And then from the franchisor side, if I see something that can make operating a small business easier for our franchise owners,
yeah,
and the money makes sense on the investment to do it, that is the way to go. And I would say this even if it wasn't on your podcast, Learning Zen is a perfect example because it has really changed the landscape for our franchise owners. They're not so worried. I mean, it goes to everything is like, they're not so worried about letting someone go because they're like, oh, I'm gonna have to spend 44 hours training someone one-to-one.
right.
Now it's like, if you have a bad apple, which everybody does from time to time, you can be like, we're gonna have to part ways, and then they're gonna find someone else, and a lot of the load of training that new person is gonna be automated with feedback and observation and authenticity that they're actually getting the proper training moving forward. So for us, that's a no-brainer because it allows people to operate their businesses better and be more profitable.
I'm gonna share my screen. So I've got two images. And on the left is me getting a pedicure at a pretty sketchy location in northern Maine. And on the right, I believe those are your feet at a Frenchie salon. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's true. Nice photos.
I feel like there's a stark difference, though, between how clean and bright and white yours looks like grease. And
right.
Mine looks like, I don't know what, like I harmed somebody in my life earlier. And,
right, yeah. You got some plastic in there and, and
absolutely.
And
the plastic's definitely not staying on. I mean, that came off within minutes, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at this image, you can get a feel for the fact that I do, love this kind of service. I'm just wondering for yourself, what's your favorite wellness service that you might do for yourself?
It is self-serving, but pedicures are game changers. I play a lot of hockey still, and it makes a world of difference to have your feet taken care of when they're going into a tight boot all the time or skiing or something like that. I'll show up in locker rooms where not everybody knows who I am because I'm filling in for somebody, and they'll see I usually have my left toe painted, my big toe painted. If it was anybody else, they'd probably say something, but everybody thinks goalies are weird anyway. So they're just like, just leave them alone. Just leave them alone. Some guys are still like, oh, I don't know. I'm not walking in there. I don't want to, seem weird or anything. I'm like, if you had a pedicure, like the next morning is when I notice it the most. I wake up and I start walking. I'm like, oh, that's what feet are supposed to feel like. Because most guys aren't getting them, and you have no idea how much more comfortable your feet can be. Yeah. And I do love that, and I love the feel of someone taking care of me, and I love the massage part of it too. That's amazing. So that would be my number one is a pedicure.
I'm really accustomed to going to franchise trade shows, but I'm always seeing it from the supplier side of things, and our customers are the franchisors, generally speaking, and not the franchisees, because franchisor creates the training material, disseminates it out to the units, who then disseminate it down to their hourly staff. So for us, we have certain trade shows that are great, right? Like the Emerging One and Springboard and IFA, FCXC. As a franchisor, what's your favorite trade show of the year and why?
I would say that's just the general IFA show.
Yeah.
Enjoy that because we're all busy. Shows take a lot of time and a lot of money to travel to, and there's lots of investment there. But I like that. I've heard of other great shows as well, but I haven't been to them all. But the IFA is where pretty much everybody's going to show up. You're going to get to see the people that you're already doing business with face to face, maybe the only time that year. You're able to check out other suppliers, new things that are possible through technology and things like that. But also other suppliers that might be offering something that it's a better fit for your system right now, whether it's system size or system needs or your phase of growth, or if you're adding new services or something like that.
This is a bit more introspective, this question here, and it's one that I phrase it differently every time, but what is something, Guy, that you used to find really scary and hard to do, that you kind of force yourself to do it and overcome that fear, and now you can do it with more relative ease? Can you think about anything that was kind of a real struggle before?
This could just be a part of my personality too. I think it's just part of business growth and personal growth. And it's one that I think would make the biggest difference for people if they could get better at it. Just keep on getting better at it. I am certainly no master, I will say that, but I am getting better at it. And that is, there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but it's a really good saying. And it's, everything happens in a conversation, like a real conversation, not texting, not keyboard warrioring. It's like a real conversation. And I think the ability to have a candid conversation with somebody, whether it's a supplier or a franchisee or a franchisor, and I think it's a secret weapon, particularly now, because so many people don't do it. They'll go back and forth on emails all day or text strings or something like that, where if someone's like, hey, let's have a phone call or let's meet, it's usually a phone call because we're spread out, but it's a game changer to be able to have that and have a conversation where there's a structure to it. Like we teach our frontline service providers the feedback loop, and that is, you identify an observable behavior, you say what that effect has, and then you say, can you do anything about that? There's no defensiveness. It's not like you did. It's like, I feel like you got mad at me yesterday. It's like, I had things on my mind. It wasn't you at all. But someone can go on, if they don't have the courage to have that candid conversation, just kind of keeps growing the rift. I think the ability to have a candid conversation and just say like, this is how it's affecting me, this is how it's affecting our franchise owners, or this is how it's affecting our brand, what's going on, what can you do about it, is a real game changer. And I think if young people and just older people just got the hang of having a real conversation, so many things would just get taken care of so much quicker. Or there would be clarity anyway. You'd be like, hey, it's very clear that we're not going to work together anymore now, whatever.
And personality plays a major part in that. And sometimes it's so hard, right, to, read an email or a text message and infer what the meaning was and what the feeling was behind those things. So I love the notion of candid conversations. It speaks very much to something that was like a hard thing for me to get over. And it was just when I went to all of the different franchising events, I knew that showing up was 50% of the game, but I think that is, but the other 50% is engaging. And so if I would go to a conference and go to a networking room, I have some social anxiety. So I would walk through the doors and see, these groups of people, right? A pod of 5 and 3 people talking over here and 2 people over there. My kryptonite was I couldn't go introduce myself to them. I felt like it would be off-putting, or, they'd be in the middle of a conversation, be like, who is that nut job? Like, why did he, assert himself into this conversation? And so that was a big, bad fear for me. And just by continuing to force myself to kind of do it every single time, I realized that once you've got some key connections, and so by the time you've gone to the second event and the third event, you have some people and some safe spaces. And you know what? You can go in to a room, hook up with one of those safe spaces that you're at. And next thing you know, the group will get bigger. They'll introduce you to someone. You can introduce them to someone. And you start to create that franchising family and that sense of ease that, nobody cares because everybody's doing the same thing. And it just kind of helped me get over that fear of networking in a one-on-one environment where I was in individual conversations. So
that can be intimidating when you feel like you're the only lone wolf in the room. You're like, that's just part of the growth. And, and as you say, and hopefully there's someone there, maybe not an IFA show or something like that, but somebody, or reach out to somebody. That's the other thing exactly.
Come find me. Introduce yourself to me, please, because I have been there where I was scared to talk to people or introduce myself. And so if you have any introverted tendencies, come find the guy in this hat because it's always on. Maybe not this one. Oh, this is my Frenchie's hat, right? So my other hat. I learned